And oh no. It's having me log in. We're going to share to your page, BDSRA, go live. Perfect. So we are live with our webinar and we are live on Facebook. Hi, everyone. My name is Morgan DeBoth. I serve as the Vice President of Support and Advocacy at BDSRA. And this is our Ask an Expert with Courageous Parents Network. With us, we have, are you the President and CEO? Is that your
I'm the Executive Director.
Executive Director, Blyth Taylor-Lord. And she will be giving us our presentation tonight. As always, if you have any questions, please drop those in the Q&A if you're joining us via webinar, or if you're joining us Facebook Live in that chat, and we will get to those at the end of her presentation. And I will hand it over to you, Blyth.
Thank you very much, Morgan. So can you still see my screen?
No, we cannot.
Okay, so I'm going to go. Oh, that's right, because we were in practice. So I will go. Hello, everyone. I will now share my screen. And
there we go.
It's really nice to be with you. Thank you for this invitation. I have known about BDS. I have known of BDSRA for many, well, not many, for quite a few years now. I am in my rare community is the National Tay-Sachs and Allied Disease community. My daughter Cameron had infantile Tay-Sachs, which is a lysosomal storage disease. She died at the age of 2. Infantile Tay-Sachs is always still sadly fatal in early childhood. And while there are some first of its kind clinical trials going on, nothing yet has been found to be impactful or therapeutic. So I am of a population that has, I am an extreme version of the rare community, rare parents. And I have had the privilege as the founder and executive director of Courageous Parents Network to talk to and hear from multiple Batten's families. And we actually interviewed a Batten's family, a CLN2 family for Courageous Parents Network. And I can show you where to hear from them later if that's something that would be helpful. Right now, I'm here to talk with you about this thing called baseline and anticipatory grief.
Okay.
So this is a picture of me with my daughter, Cameron. And this is Cameron shortly after her 1-year birthday. And just to stress from my own experience, my lived experience, and what I know to be true and have heard from other families, but I begin this presentation speaking from my own experience, that looking honestly at baseline, while it can be very hard, it helps us be our child's best parent. And it allows a kind of freedom, gives us freedom to grieve, freedom to love, and freedom to go straight to the heart of what matters most to each of us, what matters most to us as parents, as caregivers of our child who has Battens, as caregivers of our child, of our other children, if there are siblings. I'm going to play a video. Courageous Parents Network is filled with videos, but this is really a mashup of family and children faces set to narration by a pediatrician that he wrote a piece called This Thing Called Baseline. The pediatrician happens to have been my daughter's primary care pediatrician. He subsequently went on to become a pediatric palliative care doctor at Boston Children's Hospital. He worked with many, 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 many families of children living with serious illness. And he wrote this piece that we put to pictures.
There's this thing we call the baseline. And although we may not recognize it by its name, it has a deep influence on the lives of seriously ill children. It's a concept of what well is for a person at a time. The parents of seriously ill children are very aware of their child's baseline and put a lot of effort into understanding it and understanding how it relates to their hopes for the next day or for their lives. The baseline is the reference point, something to try to improve upon at times, something to try to regain at others, something that can slip away despite the best efforts, bringing with it soul searching and the need for difficult decisions about what will come next. The baseline is made up of many elements. There's the disease and its medical prognosis. There's the person, a growing child with special qualities. There's hardiness and fragility. There's stability and complications. There can be pain. Part of baseline is function, the interventions to support function, and sometimes the loss of function. There's hope. There's the deep nonverbal connection we feel when we meet our child's eyes and the worry about its loss. There's faith, there's love, there's resilience, there's devotion. There's the suffering of moments and the joys in other moments, and there is mystery. A child's baseline is especially significant when it is understood in their context. That context sometimes involves time and survival and decisions that need to be made with urgency. An important part of making decisions rests on how we feel about our child's baseline. Where's my child right now? It has to do with how sturdy things are feeling. It has to do with how much has been gained and how much has slipped away. It has to do with the private promises we make towards our children. I like to think that parents control the value in this, that a parent's narrative of their child is the baseline. The medical team can help parents understand the likely trajectories of the disease and anticipate the hard trade-offs and choices that will come. But I'm often reminded that the intense involvement of clinicians and support staff comes with commentary and judgment. Even with the best of intentions and the desire to be respectful, it can sometimes feel that they confuse what they think their choice would be with what your choice ought to be. Even with the greatest empathy, no one can see things as a parent does. As parents become aware of their child's baseline and what to expect, they often ask how they will know what to do. Their child's life can feel so medicalized, so full of technology and medicine, that they can feel unqualified. At some level, a medical baseline needs a medical mind to appraise it. But the question of what is at stake and what is worth it can only be answered by a loving parent. There's no obligation more essential than looking out for your baby. Parents are the guardians and the keepers of the baseline. In the deepest sense, I think it is the children who actually own their baselines. Their efforts with their baseline, whatever their age or condition, can come to represent the value and meaning of their lives. Those lives will embody not only what has happened to them, but how they live with it and how they live through it. It's powerful to consider that no matter what the baseline is, it provides a foundation for hope and aspiration. The simple privilege of feeling secure in our goals for each day rests on the foundation that we have, no matter how full of assumptions and predictions that foundation may be. With all the worries and concerns that come when we look at it plainly, the baseline helps us understand what is possible and how to be our child's best parent. A clear sense of the baseline allows for a kind of freedom and a lofty hope.
So I thought I would pull out some of the themes that I found particularly important and powerful in what Dr. Goldstein wrote and narrated. In orange, we have well for a certain time. Baseline is my child is well or is in their new well for a certain time. Sometimes the goal of baseline is to make it better. Sometimes it's to regain it. Ultimately, when children are living with progressive conditions, that baseline will slip. Baseline is what we hear doctors say is going to happen, and they don't always get it right. In green, we have disease and prognosis, fragility and stability, function and complications. Always, always the burden of decision making, which is both a privilege and a burden for parents. Throughout all of this, we experience moments of suffering, our own personal existential suffering when we watch our child struggle, but our child's suffering in some instances, and then more importantly, moments of beautiful joy. Then there's this line, the quiet promises we make our child. We each know what those are, and they're individual to each of us. And those promises are really the foundation of baseline. And most importantly, and present in all of this, is our ongoing, unwavering devotion and love for our child. So all of these are ingredients and considerations when we're talking about baseline. Practically speaking, baseline is really just a technical term for the new normal. It is the opposite of an acute moment or event. It is when things are stable. And as happened with my daughter Cameron, and very rapidly, baseline shifts and it shifts down like steps over time, where each lower step represents a lower level of functioning. There will be ups and downs, but the ups over time will not be as high, and the downs over time will be lower. And with a declining baseline, the final step is end of life. I first heard, I'll pause there for a moment. Married to baseline is this notion of anticipatory grief. Anticipatory grief this is a line that a mother named Maria Kafalis said. Her daughter had MLD. Anticipatory grief is grief in 3 time zones that you are experiencing simultaneously. You are grieving your past, you are grieving your present, and you are grieving your future. You are grieving the innocence of before, when you thought your child would be born healthy and typical. Or you are grieving the innocence of before, when your child's conditions were less complex and less serious and less seemingly life-threatening. You're grieving in this moment. What you're experiencing this moment isn't happening for your child, or the struggle that is in your face in that moment. And you are grieving a life you thought your child and family were going to get to enjoy together. You are, of course, writing a new life, a new path, a new future for your child and family, but concurrently with all the hope and all the determination that goes into building that future and providing for your child and family, there is the concurrent current of grief. And understanding that grief is part of your experience is very much part of the passage towards finding your balance and coping and strength. There is 100% nothing wrong with, and in fact, it is important to acknowledge the extent to which you are grieving when those moments arise. And hopefully they are not, if you're fortunate and you're in a calm and level state, those moments will be few. And then sometimes an acute event will happen and you'll be reminded of your child's condition and the prognosis, and you will be laid low again. Or it may be more subtle things, such as something that isn't happening in the playground anymore, or a shift in your child's ability to go to school. And while those are not life and death things, they are about the psychosocial and emotional well-being of your child. And you will be struck again with the grief of just being sad for how difficult things are or how less good things have become. There's also grief that you may be experiencing for the other children in your family. If your child has siblings, this is not what you wanted for them. They of course are fine. They undoubtedly love their brother or sister exquisitely, and they would have it no other way. But you as the parent know that if you had your way, this is not how it would be. And there is loss in that. There's extraordinary beauty and joy in it as well, but there is also loss. And with that loss comes grief. So this chart shows 3 different types of descending baselines. This is from the medical literature. As we experienced with my daughter Cameron, she was in the upper chart, a steady decline. And with each event that she had, and for her, the events were typically pneumonias. When she recovered from that pneumonia, she would not, her new baseline would be worse than, she would not be as functioning as she had been prior to that pneumonia. And our pediatrician, that was the first time that he used the word baseline with us. It was after her first pneumonia. And we actually observed that she had not fully returned to normal. And he said to us, he introduced the notion of baseline, and he said, with each pneumonia or acute event that Cameron has, because of the nature of Tay-Sachs, we can predict that with every acute moment, her recovery will be to a new baseline. And you, Blyth and Charlie, my husband's name is Charlie, will have to decide what you want. What if quality of life for your child is the goal, which for us it was, he knew that, you will know what baseline is no longer good enough for your daughter. And you will know that. And I will say that this introduction of this notion of baseline, and I'm a very visual person, so I saw it as descending stairs, was incredibly helpful to me. And I knew, I was like, okay, at some point we're going to hit the basement, and I don't know what it's going to feel like. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but he said, you'll know it when you get there. And that was true. And I'm pretty sure that if we hadn't had that conversation with him, and he hadn't given us this very practical understanding of what baseline is, the decision-making that ended up happening for us at the end of her life, when she got her final pneumonia, and we decided, I hope this is not upsetting to any of you, we decided not to treat her final pneumonia because her quality of life had become, in our opinion, not what she would have wanted, had become very complicated for her. But we were like, okay, we're at the bottom step. And now what do we do? But there was a lot of grief that came with that. That's my little broken heart on the right, because grief is part of traveling the baseline path. Another type of baseline is fluctuating decline, where the child has conditions that enter remission and then relapse. You see that in metabolic disorders or cancer. And the pace of decline changes, is different, it varies. And then there's the unpredictable baseline, where they go down and they recover, they go down, they recover. I'm not entirely sure how you would describe which one of these might feel most apt for you. It's not formulaic. You can know based on your child's own history what feels right. It is my hope that this is a helpful framework for you to understand progression, and to think about the emotional heartbreak, the losses and slights that happen at each new baseline interval. Now, it is, of course, I can say to you, understanding baseline, it's very empowering. It frees you up. It gives you a framework for making decisions. It gives you a framework for having some agency and feeling like you're taking the best care possible for your child. And that is all true. And as with everything, there are challenges to being guided by this notion of baseline. And I should say that quality of life, as I'm sure you know, is particular. What quality of life for your child, for your family, is particular to every individual family. So there's no best baseline formula. It's just, you'll know when, and we'll get to some of these things later. You'll have your own bottom step. That's important to state. Okay, challenges to being guided by baseline is that changes in baseline can be very subtle, almost imperceptible, because of course we are caring for and living with our children every single day. They are under our noses. We adapt beautifully, exquisitely, and there are things that we aren't even noticing, thank God. But in not noticing them, we are probably missing some shifts. We normalize the shifts in our children's behavior or care that cumulatively over time become quite significant. And we'll get to that in a moment. On the right are some quotes from this particular mom, Liz, who wrote a piece on CPN about baseline, which I have drawn from liberally and unashamedly because it's such an exquisite piece. Her son had mitochondrial disease. She wrote, "It's hard to look back when you're trying to keep your child's life moving forward," which is just a very, very wise thing to say. So on that note, questions to consider to assess change, because it would be exhausting, and I would argue unhealthy, to be on high alert for whether your child's condition is changed on a daily basis or even a weekly basis. But periodically, and perhaps when events happen and you are having to have a conversation, dialogue with your child's clinician, you can ask these questions. And I can share them with Morgan. They're actually on the CPN website, which I'll get to in a minute. But these are some very, very helpful questions that when you dare to ask them, and it takes courage to look, but when you do, these questions, answers to these questions are very revealing. So I'm just going to give you a moment to read them yourself. I will share with you that when my daughter died, I made a video for her memorial service. And I made the it included a video, home video from her birthday and her second birthday, and her second birthday party was right before she died. So when I made the video, which was right after she died, I put that home video in, and it just looked happy, and I was just so proud of the party we were able to give her, and she looked so beautiful in her birthday dress. And okay, a year later, on the first anniversary of when she died, I watched the video, which has become our ritual, and I could not believe how unwell she looked. A year later, looking at her with fresh eyes, I saw a completely different child. And it was not as I remembered her at her birthday. It was not as I remembered her in the months leading up to her birthday. And thank God for that. But I just have to say, that's why these questions are hard but important. Okay. Challenge number 2. How are we doing, Morgan? Are we doing okay? I don't know if there are any questions in the chat, or if anybody's saying stop, or.
No, we're good. Can you talk a bit about that challenge, that first challenge, or are you going to touch on how to maybe have some good advice about how to cope with those challenges or work within those?
Well, absolutely. Let me maybe go through, and then I'll come back to that. If I forget, just remind me of that question. Okay, and I can come back. Okay, so challenge number 2, as we probably all know, is that treatments, as the child's condition progresses, more and more treatments are required. And then it's hard to figure out, is this a new baseline because there's a treatment that's causing all these side effects? Like, what's going on here? And those are very, very, very hard to untangle and figure out. And the same mom said, I wondered how I would feel about everything we were doing for him, which increasingly felt like doing to him. I just knew that everything felt incoherent, and I did not have the mental or emotional bandwidth to untangle it. And in truth, the clinicians can't really tell you, they can't untangle it either, because as things become more and more complex, there's more and more being thrown at the children to try to address symptoms and manage for comfort and manage for well-being. And it's hard to control for what's happening and what's not. I'm seeing a question in the chat. I'd like to know how to explain it to siblings, especially younger ones. What's going on with their older siblings? They aren't so rough. Okay. I will, Corinne, I'll make sure I address that. Okay. Challenge number 3 is that providers are trained to fix things, and some things cannot be fixed. But it is the rare clinician who is not a palliative care clinician who will acknowledge that. They like to throw short-term solutions to a long-term problem. And there are conditions under which that's extremely helpful and great, certainly with regard to pain management, pain and comfort. But then there are other solutions that they're going to throw that don't help and just complicate the mental load, the burden that you are carrying as your child's decision maker. So here are here's some things to help, how to use baseline to help with decisions. And this is during or after an acute episode, whether your child's been hospitalized for something. It may have been a cold, a negative reaction to a virus, or some other event. And I will give you a moment. No, this is not, if you are valuing, this bullet's not supposed to be a bullet. The other things follow. But these are some questions that you can use with your child's clinician to inform your decision making.
And we can provide all these slides to our community, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I'm gonna make sure that there's actually a guide that has all of this plus more on CPN, which I'll send you a link to, Morgan, so you can send that out to everybody.
Thank you.
This is a video we could watch, which I'm thinking in the interest of time, I will come back to that if we want. Challenge number 4 is our culture still views death as a failure. And when you have a neurodegenerative regressive condition without a curative treatment, eventually, and an untimely but not unexpected death happens. And being able to think honestly about that eventuality, not happily, not thinking happily, takes a lot of courage to go there. And you don't have to go there at all if you don't want. But if and when you do, and you think about what you think no longer good enough is for your child, it can liberate you, as Dr. Goldstein said, but you will be singular. You are in a rare world of people who are willing to accept that, deal with that, and you will want to make sure that there are people, that the people closest to you, including your child's medical team, but friends and family as well, who understand why you are then at that point, and not necessarily going to decide to do everything. You may decide to do everything to try to keep your child alive at the end, when things are, in my case, the final pneumonia, and she was so terribly sick. But if for you that is the bottom step of your child's quality of life, you will want to have people to support you in that.
There's a wonderful quote on Courageous Parents Network website that says, and it's from a mom, and she says, we all do the best we can at the time with the information we have. And I think that this is one of those topics that I've heard some families say, I wouldn't change a thing. Like I just could. They did the best they could with the knowledge they had. Yeah. And then no matter how well or how poorly a parent feels, they handled it. They always come with mixed emotions. It matters in what season they're in too. So this one's tricky, and I've heard from quite a few in our community that this is a big struggle.
It's a big struggle. I mean, the whole thing is a struggle.
Yeah.
But some things are particularly difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I love this line from Dr. Goldstein. Parents are the guardians and the keepers of the baseline. You are your child's protector. You are the keeper of your child's quality of life. The disease, the diagnosis, is on its own determined path that genetics have wrought, and that part is out of your control, but everything else is in your control. How you love, how you care, how you tend, how you talk, what you advocate for, how you support each other, how you support siblings. I'll get to that question in the chat. These are all things that you can do. And baseline, as we saw in all those circles, consists of all of those things. So it isn't just what's happening with your child's body. It's all the things that are in what makes up your child's well-being, what makes up your family well-being. What is your child's well-being in that moment? What is your family's well-being? That is what we're talking about. And then being willing to accept that there are significant wells of grief embedded in all of this, alongside the pride and the joy you take in tending to your child and your and keeping going. I want to go to this. This is a quote. This mom is a Batten's mom. She actually had 2 children who died from Batten's in their late, I think they were both in their late teens. I love this. She shared this with me privately. And I just find it extremely inspiring and encouraging, because here is a mom who said that she takes great pride in the world that she created for her children, and that she kept them as happy. We kept them as happy as we could. I used to say that I worked for smiles, and it's true. A day with a smile was a job well done. And these are things that clinicians may not understand. They may not know that that's a good day for you. And that's something that you get to tell them. Like, where we are right now is still okay, or okay enough, because my child is smiling.
Mhm.
And then here's the mom, Liz, and her son, Colson. It took me 4 years to move from managing my child's baseline towards life to managing it towards less, then giving it over to death. Not all parents are granted that time to adjust to a diagnosis, to a barrage of symptoms, to the truth that they may outlive their child, and that doing so might just be the best way to love them. It takes tremendous courage to do what you do every single day. And of course, as this mom says, I didn't like for people to tell me that I was a good mother or courageous. Of course, I'm going to show up for my kid every day. I love them. That's what we do. I didn't get a choice. But still, I think it's really important to acknowledge how courageous you are. And that's why I called Courageous Parents Network, Courageous Parents Network. And I do, oh, no, there's one. Yes. So Courageous Parents Network, if you don't know who we are, Morgan will be sharing it, and we are an online web and mobile platform for families caring for children living with serious illness. We are disease agnostic, so we feature families caring for children with all sorts of different conditions, some of them neurological, genetic, cancer, metabolic, mitochondria. And we have, I founded it. Our staff is largely parents who have been through this. We have advisory boards of clinicians who care for these families and other parents who've been through this, all of which informs the content that we produce. The content is designed to lessen the isolation, to help you orient, make decisions, advocate for your family, and move forward with confidence in feeling, as Morgan said, that you are being the best possible parent you can be with the information that you have. And we focus on empowering parents while they are actively caring for their children as advocates and decision makers. And if and when the time comes that end of life is on the horizon, we go there very gently, but very honestly. And then we feature families talking about their child's end of life. And then we have so much content for parents whose child has died. We have a lot of bereavement content, and a lot of the content is videos of parents talking about their experience, sharing how they coped, what they've done, decisions they made, what they thought about. And the idea is that by listening to another parent, and we produce the videos, so they're professionally produced. You're not watching somebody on their FaceTime going, wah, wah, wah. Not that would be a problem, but we make it as consumable as possible. is that you can listen to this mom or dad talking about a decision they made, and you could be like, oh, wow, that appeals to me, or hell no. Like, it's by hearing from other parents like you can figure out what resonates with you. Certainly you can see that you are not alone,
Yeah.
and hopefully it gives you language.
Can you share about the app that you all just launched?
Yes, so CPN has an app which you can download. Well, first of all, if you are not a member of Courageous Parents Network, I hope you will join, and I'll put some of these links in the chat, or I'll send them, Morgan. I think it might be easier if I just send them to you, and then
I'll put all the resources in an email and send them to everyone that registered. And then if you are joining us via Facebook Live and would like those resources, just shoot me an email and I will send those to you as well.
This, what I thought is, I'll show you that this guide, that those links that I had, those tips and questions here is, oh, are you going to see this? Because it's not embedded in the PowerPoint. So I think what I have to do is stop sharing. Stop sharing. And then I will start sharing again. Hang with me, people. So now you're probably seeing the guide. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
So this is the guide that you can download that has all this information about what baseline is, and the graph of different types, questions to consider about shifting your child's baseline, and questions to ask with your child's medical team when you are thinking about whether there has, when you're using baseline as a not indicator, but as a variable in decision making. And then the other piece that I'll show you is we have a whole unit on baseline, which is here. We have a guided pathway, which includes text and videos. Here's the guide. Here, this section is parents talking about shifts in baseline, and then we have content in Spanish. And I'll just show you, this is all available 24/7. So we have 1 out of 10 means there are 10 videos of parents talking about baseline, and you can just go in and start listening to them. This is a great one. This is little Juliana and her mom Michelle talking about when quality of life bumped into quantity of days. And this mother of Juliana is a neurologist. So she was experiencing, she is an adult neurologist, not a pediatric neurologist, but her eyes were opened in a completely different way for what the family experience is like, the caregiver experience is like when it was her child who had a rare condition. Here we have one of the country's leading physicians for children living with severe neurological impairment. And she's a pediatric palliative care doctor. This is Dr. Julie Hauer, and she talks a lot about the difference between fix and manage. Most clinicians are going to try to fix a problem, but as we know, some problems can't be fixed, in which case it's about management. Here she is talking with a mom. And, is this a new acute problem, or is this a shift in baseline? And I want to say that these things, the baseline muscle, the baseline thing is a muscle that you practice. You have to use. It becomes, if this is new to you, I suspect it won't be. Hopefully what I'm describing, you'll be like, oh, I understand that. I've been living with that. I didn't know that it was called baseline, or you already did know it was called baseline. But once you understand what it's called and how it works and how you can use it, it's there to be used, not to have it use you. You will find it as, especially those questions you can incorporate them into a lot of your child's, your caregiving. And it will help empower you. And as I said, provide hopefully some clarity and some freedom.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you join, you'll just click on this Be Connected, and that will allow you to get emails from us twice a month with what's new on the platform. And you can also just download the app by clicking on this download the app up here. Everything is available on your phone because we're trying to make it as easy and accessible as possible. All right, so I think now I'm going to go look at the questions that we have.
So Corinne's question was, I would like to know how to explain it to siblings, especially the younger ones, age 3, what's going on with their older siblings so they aren't so rough on them, knocking them over when playing or when they see a seizure or feeding tubes.
So I think, Corinne, it's really being as honest as you can be without, of course, scaring them. You do not need to talk about, the prognosis, but just that your brother or sister has something called Batten's disease. It is, they were born with it. It's not something you can get. You don't have it, they have it. It's not your fault. It isn't your brother or sister's fault. It's just nature made him or her that way. And with that come these things such as a seizure. And you can explain, I think what's going to be really important is that they not be afraid of the seizures, and maybe emphasize that the seizure looks scary, but isn't hurting their sibling. You can just stress that there's not, it looks scary, but it's okay. And then with regard to being gentle with feeding tubes and things, you can just say, we have to take special care of what your child's name is, because they need our help to stay safe. And the feeding tube helps them get food because they can't eat through their mouth, because nature doesn't let them eat through their mouth. And you get to help me help them stay safe. And we need to not hit those tubes. And maybe get them a doll that they can practice with, because they're working out, they're trying to make sense of what this is. But I will say with those younger children will be, except I believe in my experience with families, beautifully compassionate and wise growing up with a sibling with Batten's.
Another question that came in through Facebook: how do you recommend we get the different providers to collaborate and talk together about the child and not work in isolation so everyone is on the same page?
Okay, of course, this is one of the hugest questions. So if you are in a position or in a community where palliative care is available, where your child is, a palliative care clinician, that's one of the things they do, is they convene the interdisciplinary, interspecialty meeting precisely to make sure that it's looking at the whole child and the whole family, and not just the heart, the brain, the lungs. Palliative care, if you don't know, is not about end of life. It's not about hospice. It's about quality of life. And it should, for kids diagnosed with Batten's, which is still a devastating diagnosis, it is appropriate from diagnosis onwards. So you can ask, I would like a palliative care consult. And if the palliative care is available in your community, in your hospital, you may get a clinician who says, but your child's not dying. And you're like, I know. And I want to keep them as well as possible for as long as possible, which means I need you guys to be talking to each other. And I know that a palliative care clinician will help make that possible. If there is no palliative care available where you are, you can ask for a family meeting and say, I would like to get all of you guys in the room at the same time. And I want to see you talking to each other. Or you could appoint the lead, if you have a preferred clinician, might be your child's pulmonologist, or neurologist, you could go to them and say, I would like to deputize you to convene this meeting because this is not fair to me. You guys can and must do better. I need you talking to each other. And so that is what I recommend.
If a parent were to have a difficult situation where they have a child neurologist who says, I really don't feel comfortable doing that, or I don't have time to do that, or insert excuse here, how would you go about maybe a different route?
About the team meeting?
Yes.
I don't have time.
Or I'm unavailable, or we can't get our schedules together. This is fine to just work through email or something like that.
No, I think you find a champion. It may be a social worker.
Mhm.
You need a champion, and you need to, insist, like, this is not okay. You must do better.
Mhm.
This is not okay. You must do better. And I would lead with recognizing how hard their job is and how taxed for time they are, because that is all true.
Mhm.
They all want to do right. But you can say your job will be much easier, Dr. So-and-so, if I know how all these pieces fit together.
Mhm.
Because until that happens, you cannot help me, because I don't understand all of this. So you and me alone isn't working it out of context. So this will go better for you if you help me do this. And if they can't, ask them for somebody who can.
Yeah. I also just want to point out that I believe that those care team meetings are billable hours for them.
Yes.
So I would also bring that up, because they're not really losing money by by meeting with you or taking that time out.
No, that's absolutely right, Morgan. They are billable hours, but a reason to get palliative care on the team is that's actually what they're there for. You don't have to convince a palliative care clinician to convene the meeting. That's part of their job description.
Absolutely. And just to plug Courageous Parents Network again, they have some really amazing videos on palliative care and what that could look like for your family, and just kind of debunking some of the fear around engaging a palliative care team. And I will do one final call for questions. If anyone's listening and they have a question that they'd still like to ask, feel free to drop those in the chat on either Facebook Live or the Q&A. Give folks a few minutes.
Is Corinne still there? And if she is, Corinne, was my answer helpful to you?
She said yes.
Okay, good. Good.
All right.
Oh, I'm glad, Amanda. You're very welcome. May I ask, I would love if you, either in the chat or on Facebook Live, I'd love to know the ages of your children who are living with Battens. It brings it alive for me.
6, 7. We have any over here? Nope.
I love all of you. I love all
Well,
of you.
Well, we are so grateful that you joined us this afternoon, and really appreciate your insight and your expertise, and sharing your knowledge about baseline, and also sharing wonderful research that is Courageous. And we hope to continue to partner with you and hear from you soon.
Thank you, Morgan, and thank you, everybody. And I'm 8 years old, 15, 23, 7, 6. Wow. Well, honestly, I really do encourage you to, when Morgan sends it out, join CPN if you're not already a member.
Mhm.
You'll get an email twice a month with updates of what we've got going on. We do live events, one live event on Zoom every month on a topic that we hear from families is of interest to them. The one we've got coming up next week is on bereavement.
Mhm.
But the one we have in May is on financial planning,
Mhm.
because a lot of these children require, parents worry about being able to afford and estate planning. And the one we have in June is tips for traveling with your medically complex child. There's a
Mhm.
lot of good stuff coming up. And then 24/7 is what's on the website. So
Yes. And then one last question. Sarah asked if this would be recorded. It will be recorded, and I should have the recording up by tomorrow. And I'll send out everything just in one email. But you can also find the recording. It will be uploaded on YouTube. So if you search BDSRA on YouTube, it'll be there.
okay.
But thank you again, and have a great night, everyone.
Bye everyone.